Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. Kevin and Angel here, and today we're just going to be talking a little bit about what we have going on, our business. I feel like it could be cool to kind of share with you guys what we have going on behind the scenes, and we do so much talking about growing a dog training business, and I feel like it's also kind of helpful to kind of talk to you guys about what we have going on our company and our side of things and stuff like that. So, Angel, why don't you share a little bit about like what's going on this week and what you've been up to?
Yeah, well, our team is growing, so that's super exciting. We have a new person on our team that probably most of our clients have already met, Beth. She's awesome. And we have another person coming on that most of our clients will be meeting here shortly. But yeah, it's really exciting. All the stuff that we've kind of been talking about on the back end and like goals that we have and stuff like that. And it's all like you said, like we're always helping our clients grow their business, or at least trying to convince people to hire, especially when like we notice certain parts in their business that they need help in. And so, yeah, we're pretty much doing like that exact same stuff on our side. Kind of have to like pinpoint certain areas that we need a little bit extra help in, or like certain areas that we want to grow in. But in order to grow, we're going to need to, hire someone in this area and stuff like that. So all of the stuff that we recommend to our clients and help our clients pinpoint, we're doing the exact same thing on our side of it. And yeah, a lot of growth over the last few weeks.
Yeah. So something that's coming to mind for me right now is I was talking to one of our clients about this and how it would also be, it would be very fraudulent for me to talk about all this stuff and, how to hire and who to hire and when to hire and marketing your business and growing your business and spending money on ads and, doing the hard stuff in your business if I don't actually do it all myself as well. And obviously I'm not perfect, right? And there's still things that I struggle with and I'm learning and growing my company, stuff like that. But yeah, I think it can be just really interesting. Like when I reflect on what am I doing and what is the advice that I give to people. And it's really fascinating. Sometimes, what I always think about is we all have the answers like to what we should be doing next. And a lot of times we can get in our own way. And that was something that I was reflecting on a lot recently, which is like, people will come to me and I'll help them problem solve in their business. And you have this clarity when you're giving other people advice because you're kind of emotionally removed from the situation. And because you're emotionally removed, you can see it clearly and you can just be like, oh, just do this. This will fix that problem. Make this higher or make this change in your process and that'll fix the business. But when it's you're so intertwined in the day-to-day operations that it can be difficult sometimes to really, just have that clarity and see where to go. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting down and I had a great call yesterday with one of our clients, Bethany, who's been on this podcast before. And she was sharing with me just kind of like talking about the next phase of her business that she's entering into and how she wants to spend her time. And what I said to her is I was like, your job right now at a certain point, once you have your business like pretty much fully staffed, like you have the trainers, you have the marketing dialed in, you have someone who's like setting consultations, you have someone who's doing sales. Your job at that point is to continue to move the business forward. And as corny as this may sound and cliche, it's like you're supposed to be like the visionary for the business, the person who's like going to bring it to that next level. And so, going back to my original point from before, we all largely know what to do and what needs to get done in our business. And I'll never forget, I heard somebody talking about this, a really successful entrepreneur talking about this a couple years ago, framing it in your mind. Like if you're confused or you're feeling like a little bit lost, thinking to yourself like, okay, I have this problem. How would a really successful business owner solve this problem? What would they do? And it's really fascinating because you're almost like able to like tap into that. It's almost like prompting ChatGPT. Like you can prompt it by saying like, you are the world's most prolific business coach for dog training businesses. How would you solve this problem? And then you just like lay out exactly what's going on and it gives you an answer. You're actually able to do that yourself, I've found, and you largely
Mhm.
already kind of know what you're supposed to do. But the really difficult part is not actually knowing what to do. It's like trusting your intuition and then actually executing on what it is that you know needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I think it's easier for us to, or I guess easier for anyone to make recommendations to someone when you like don't have an emotional investment in that specific business. I mean, we do to an extent. We love our clients. We love seeing them like grow and be successful and stuff like that. But obviously, that's totally different than the emotional investment in someone who is a business owner and that is their livelihood and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I hope that brings like some comfort to people or to our clients at least knowing that like these are the exact same things that we deal with on our end like when people would say that it's easier to say it rather it's either easier said than to be done or whatever that saying is,
I
which it
get what you're
is.
putting down.
Good, I'm glad. Which it is, but again, it's all stuff that like we're dealing with on our end too and like the behind the scenes conversations we have and having to like pinpoint certain like growing pains and stuff like that in the business and what we need to do in order to help that and fix it and stuff like that. And then when it comes to people, like the example that you gave where like people have to think of like this is what I have going on, what would a super successful business owner do to fix that? That I feel like oftentimes isn't something that people naturally think of, which I think needs to be done more often. But I would say more often, it's just like, I can't do this. I'm too busy,
Mhm.
which that's what we're here for. We're here to like help coach our clients and stuff like that. And so we kind of help like people come to these realizations and then help them problem solve and then help them bring things to fruition to help, solve these problems that they have going on. But I think it can be difficult, especially for like a business that's just like a one man show or a one woman show doing literally everything. You're wearing all these different hats. You're also having to have a life outside of running a business. So I've found that it's difficult for people to just like have that thought on their own. And I actually had a call with one of our clients recently where we he's dealing with some struggles, with like personal stuff and business and whatever, and we're kind of trying to like figure out and pinpoint kind of like where he is falling behind in business. And there was something that I suggested, or maybe even like brought up, like, well, hey, are you doing this? And it was something like to me felt is like super simple because it's just like one of the basics that you need to do in order to make sales. But I like to start with the basics and then just like keep trying to problem solve from there. And then he all of a sudden was like, I never thought of that. Like I like that's literally the most important part in running a business and getting consultations scheduled or at least getting to the point of having conversations with people to get those consultations scheduled. And yeah, that's literally not what I'm doing. That is the most simple thing. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. Like you just randomly brought it up. And again, it was just one of those basic things where I'm just like trying to make sure all the basics are being covered before we go into like deeper problem solving. And it was just one of those little basic things. And so again, saying all that to say, I've noticed that it's difficult for people to kind of just have like the mental bandwidth to think like deeper into it. And that's what we're here for. But at the same time, I think that's why it's so important, why we are always encouraging people to get on calls, go to group coaching calls, surround yourself with other business owners and other like minded people and other successful people. So that way you're always like being fed information and always having other people to like bounce ideas off of. So that way you're not counting on like your one brain to like literally think of everything and problem solve everything and all that.
Yeah. Another way to think about this is most of us don't need to be taught. Most of us need to be reminded. Like we've
Yeah.
all heard, and many times, especially if you listen to this podcast, you're probably sick of hearing it, that like answering your phone is important and setting consultations is important and building in trust and rapport with leads is important, following up with people and raising your prices and hiring. But the thing is, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to understand it, and it's a completely different thing to like live it.
Hmm.
And I think somebody said that to me a couple weeks ago. That's like, most of us don't need to be taught, most of us need to be reminded. And that was very true to me. That I'm like, I know the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing, but it's like I'm not doing it. And then I get reminded of it, or I'm hanging around somebody who is doing it. I'm seeing the success that they're having. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want. And so then I am reminded of that, and then I start doing it. And so yeah,
Hmm.
like even when you think that you have it all figured out, it's just good to spend time around other people who are doing something that you want to be doing. Like they're getting the results in their business that you would like to have, or they're just kind of like going through the same trials and tribulations. And on the reverse side of things, really being adamant to not give your time to people who are more than happy to give advice when they don't have the things that you want. And you wouldn't trade their life for anything. And so there's a lot
Yeah.
of that going on. Like I always get reminded as talking to Bethany, like she mentioned that on the call yesterday that we had together, how she's like, I stayed stuck for so long because I was listening to other people, other dog trainers, like give me advice on business who didn't own businesses that I would want to have.
Yep.
You know, we just signed up a
Yeah.
new client the other day as well. And same thing. She's like, I was really, talking to her about in person consultations and, building trust and rapport. And she straight up said to me, she's like, this is like the opposite advice that I've been getting from other people. But the way that you explained it to me, it makes so much sense. And
Hmm.
then I also said to her too, I was like, do those people have businesses that you would want to own? She's like, absolutely not. And I'm like, it's so easy. Like, it's so fascinating. The people who are quickest to give advice tend to be the people who are not really even succeeding themselves. It's like because they have
Hmm.
nothing but time to sit around and talk about it and pontificate about it. And the people who are actually succeeding are busy doing the things that are growing their business.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that could go a lot of other ways too. Like, getting advice from someone who isn't running a successful business or even running a business that you would want to run, but also like we have some new clients who have been incredibly successful just in the short time that they've been with us so far. And I know that the way that they kind of have their sales process set up is very different from like what we would typically recommend, but it works for them and it works fantastic for them. And they're incredibly successful because of their background in sales that they already have. And so I feel like that maybe it's not like along the same lines as what we're talking about it, but it just reminds me of that because if someone were to, let's say someone with zero sales experience, someone who's like never done a consultation even in their life, were to see how successful they are and try to take their sales process and mimic it, they may not be as successful and they're going to be like, well, why? It's working for them without thinking of like all of the other things that came before, they found success in doing their sales process that way. They both have a lot of sales experience in general. And so it's not just like, hey, do your consultations this way and you'll have success. But it's like there's so many like little details in the way that they talk to people and the way that they present things and the way that they make sure to be empathetic and like soft with people during, certain parts of the conversation. Like there's so many things that go into it. And so again, that's just kind of something that comes up for me too is like considering people's experience and considering like what they had to do to get to that point before you take their advice. What works for one person isn't going to work for the next, maybe because they've been running their business for, 15 years or, they have like 15 years of sales experience or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And this new client I was talking about before, she said to me, like, I did a coaching call with a trainer who's a really well-known trainer. And she was saying to me, like, the advice, she wasn't getting let's start with this. Like, she was not getting the results that she wanted to see. Right. So that's the most important thing in the equation here. She wasn't getting the results she wanted to see. And the advice she was getting from people was like, well, just keep doing this. Like, and she's like, well, I'm doing that and it's not working. And what I said to her is like, you have to be careful who you take advice from because that trainer that you're speaking about probably started their business back in 2000. maybe the late 90s. And so when they started their business, it was a completely different landscape. And they also now have 26 years of like word of mouth referrals built up and just notoriety in the dog training world and stuff like that. And so the things that they're going to be able to do to acquire clients and customers are very different than somebody who has no social proof, no social media, no reviews, no referral base, doesn't have a website. Like you're starting from ground zero. It's like doing something that like a pseudo celebrity in the dog training world is doing is like ridiculous, you know? And
Mhm.
so I think a lot of times people look at the person who's the finished product, so to speak, and they try and emulate that. But what you really need to be doing is like emulating the things that that finished product that person was doing earlier on in the career, because that's way more applicable to you. And yeah, to your
Mhm.
point from before, everyone's unique. Everyone is different, and certain things work for certain people. It's like the greatest analogy in the world is like fitness. You know, it's like I know the things that I need to do to get into shape and the things I need to eat and not eat. But I've met dudes who eat McDonald's and eat candy and they're like jacked. And I'm like, yeah, that dude hit the genetic lottery, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't, you know, I've like
Yep.
skinny Irish, you know, peasant farmer genetics, you know, and so like you get what you get, you know. So, but the point is like I can't do the same exact things as other people and get the same results. Some people are
Mhm.
really gifted. So, and again, like, that ties in with sales. Some people are really good at selling over the phone and they're really good at building a connection. If your calls are lasting 2 minutes and you feel like you don't know what else to say and the conversation's dying and then you just feel like you need to give them a price, you know, then obviously that's never going to work. And so you
Mhm.
need to do something different. And so don't model your business off of what somebody else is doing if it doesn't work for you. If you model it off somebody else and it works when you do it as well, great, then keep doing that. But if you're trying to do something that someone else is succeeding at and you're not succeeding at it, and I mean, that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You have to change it.
Mhm.
It's not about what other people do, or I should say, it's not about what works for other people. It's all about what works for you. That's literally the only thing that matters. You know, if
Yeah.
I need to work out 6 days a week to get in shape and someone else needs to only work out 1 day a week, you know, that's just the way that it goes. And so if I need to do in-person consultations or in order to close more people, I need to do 2-hour sales calls with them. Yeah, I can work on getting better. But at the end of the day, it's like you need to focus on doing the things that work for you, not daydreaming and focusing on stuff that doesn't work for you.
Mhm. Yep. In addition to that too, I feel like in some cases, I mean, unless you're talking to someone who maybe you're like really close with and you truly know the ins and outs of their business, most of the time that's not the case. As far as like people knowing the ins and outs of someone's business, you know what I mean? Because you could talk to a business owner who's like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy, like I'm super booked out and all that kind of stuff." And that person, they could be like a one man show that and like booked out to them means 3 dogs a month. And if it is, that's totally fine. But what is like booked out and successful to them is going to be different to the next person. Then there's other people who are like, "Oh, I want like 15 dogs a month. Like that's what I can handle between me and my partner or something like that." And booked out for them might mean they have 15 dogs booked for, this 1 month or the next 3 months or whatever. Success looks different for everyone. Even with like the leads that people are getting in, like some people can get in like 20 leads a month and they end up closing like 15. Other people might get like 50 leads a month and they also close 15, but they're super happy. But just imagine how much more they would get if they closed more of those leads. So it's like there's so many different variables and so many different versions of like what happiness and success looks like to every person. And like I've had conversations like this with some of our clients too, maybe where they can't help but compare themselves to the next person, or they hear about, maybe they talk to a couple people who called inquiring about training and then those people end up saying like, "Oh, I went with this other trainer." And then they start comparing themselves to that other trainer and they're like, "Well, why are all my clients going to that person? That trainer must be like super good or something like that." And I've been personally in a situation as a trainer where there was another local trainer that always had a lot of dogs. And so, like, from the outside, it seemed like, they're super busy, they're doing great, and all that kind of stuff. And then, probably like a year or two after I heard about this person, I started getting a bunch of dogs from like people who had previously sent their dogs to that person and then had them retrained and just talked about terrible experiences they had with that person. So, like, you really don't know what goes on behind the scenes in people's business. And also, sometimes people might just put up a front and claim that they're super successful. But again, you don't know what goes on in detail and behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. And again, what success looks like to each individual business owner.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, we put up posts from time to time on my Facebook and stuff like that, and every once in a while, it's so fascinating the reactions that you can get from people, and you can post something that's literally like an interview of somebody being like, I worked with Top Dog Advertising and made $20,000 this month. And here's exactly how I did it. And they're real people. You can go and find them. You can see their website. You can see that these are not
Sometimes
paid
they're
actors.
sometimes they're even the ones commenting on the
Yeah,
interview saying, "Yes, this is true."
that's me. And people will just be like, scam. This isn't real.
Yeah.
And I think what that is like it's a total self-limiting belief. And so to your point, on the opposite side of that coin where you can look at somebody and think they have it all figured out, and then a year later they're going out of business. You can also look at things like that's not true, that's not possible, you can't make that much money as a dog trainer, nobody could do that good of a job if you had 4 dogs in for board and trains and stuff like that. Or I know that this is like a big critique of people that have different training ideologies and stuff like that. And what I always think about with this is like, if they really sucked, they would have tons of negative reviews. But there's people that get criticized, and people love to hate online. It's a really fascinating just thing to watch. But yeah, like, pick a big name trainer or something like that, or pick even somebody who's like the biggest in your market. You're like, they suck and they don't do this and I'm better because of this reason. It's like their clients don't think they suck. They have 200 5-star reviews, you know? And so I
Mhm.
think it's really just important to open your eyes a lot of times to just like, there is a lot of potential here. One thing we can only as human beings know one thing for sure, and that is that we don't really know everything and really anything. And so if you just open yourself up to the idea of like there's things out there that I do not know, and there's people that are way ahead of me, you can it's a really exciting thing. It shouldn't be something that should be discouraging to you. It should be something that is more so inspiring. And looking at
Mhm.
someone else who made $20,000 or $50,000 in a month. I have an interview coming up with our 2 clients, Angela and John, who just did over 100K in a month. One of our clients, Hunter, just texted me earlier that I think in March he did like 101K or something like that. And yeah, it's just so fascinating how people would look at that and go, that's impossible. And because it's impossible, these people need to be lying. And they're really not. Like they have the numbers in their bank account and their Stripe account to prove it. And yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say here, like open up to your mind and think about it through the lens of opportunity and all that can be accomplished, not the lens of like that's impossible and that's all a scam and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, I know we were kind of all over the place on this podcast today. I hope you guys got some value out of this though, and I hope this was somewhat motivational to you and inspiring. And yeah, we appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you guys all very soon in the next one. See you guys.
Bye.